Yes, I can do that. Yes, tonight last week we had the Imagine College Hill Community Design Charrette. We did that via Zoom, and we had some good participation from the community. And tonight we have some members of our consultant team, Jeff Farrell and Mary Madden and Anita Morrison are here to give a presentation, sort of a report out, a work in progress report from that community design charrette. So with that, I just hand it over to, I believe Jeff was going to start out the presentation. Oh, Mary's going to start out for us tonight.
Okay, am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Is that okay, Karen?
Yes, we can see you fine. You bet.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you, members of the Planning Commission, for allowing us to come do this update on the Imagine College Hill project. I am going to start with a little bit of background for you all and members of the public who may not have been involved with the project to date, and then give a little bit of detail on last week's activities. And then Anita Morrison, who is the economist in our team, will provide a little bit of information on the market analysis for the College Hill area. And then Jeff Farrell will have the fun part of taking us through some aspirational ideas, a vision for the future, what could happen in College Hill as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to jump in and give you a little background about the project. The City Council last January adopted a set of priorities for this visioning effort. These will be available, this entire presentation will be available on the project website, as well as the regular public TV station that you all have there. So the council adopted a set of project priorities for us as we were engaged to start thinking about the future of College Hill. The first task for us is to really understand what College Hill is, strengths and weaknesses. We want to make sure everyone understands our study area was bigger than what's traditionally thought of in College Hill. We were looking at historic plans, looking at the zoning ordinance. We also spent some time last January walking around the district. And so when people tell us that it gets cold there, we know that, we appreciate it. We got to experience it firsthand. We walked around the neighborhoods, the business district, saw good, bad, ugly, indifferent, new houses, old houses, student housing, residential neighborhoods. So, and of course, the University of Northern Iowa. We feel like we had a pretty good sense of what the district is like today, including that there are new houses in the area that, I apologize for that. I'm not sure what just happened. New infill that has happened, as well as the historic nature of the district. We started really analyzing what the areas look like to us, understanding that it's not all the same. We did a series of meetings in January. We met with student leaders, property owners, landlords, neighborhood groups. We had a public session where we got people to tell us what they liked, what they didn't like, looking at maps of the area, identifying strengths and weaknesses, telling us the type of development they liked and didn't like, didn't want to see. We ended up with a set of maps with red and green dots, as well as written comments on why they did or didn't like different things, as well as a bunch of posters where people use the green and red dots to tell us what they liked for the area, both in the residential neighborhoods and in the core. These are some of the things that they didn't want to see in the future, the nearby neighborhoods, so not just the business district, but potential houses in the area. Last week, we were with you virtually. We had planned to do this event last March, and as we all are aware, we sort of were overtaken by events. So last week we did hold, as Karen indicated, a virtual charrette. We participated with the members of the community via Zoom, via the project website, a few different opportunities for engagement. On Saturday, we had a virtual session with breakout rooms where members of the community worked with facilitators from our team and really highlighted specific areas in the College Hill study area, things they liked and didn't like again. But even more, we started digging into what people would like to see in the future, what they would like to see in the business area, in the neighborhoods, the parks, the trails, etc. We captured a lot of information during that session. Some big picture of what we heard a lot about the importance of preserving the neighborhoods. We heard about the importance of walkability, the natural areas, the need for street trees, replanting street trees. We heard about people's desire for more options to do with retail and dining in the heart of College Hill. And we heard quite a bit about bicycles. There are some people who said perhaps on Saturday the bicycle ped community was overrepresented, but we did hear a lot about bicycles. Our team met virtually, working together on design ideas, as well as a series of technical meetings. We met with business and property owners, realtors, the city public works staff, Met Transit. As I mentioned, the Ped Bike Committee. We talked with parking folks, both from the city and the university. We talked with code enforcement. We talked with the College Hill Partnership. So we really tried to make sure we had a good sense of what was going on as we started exploring ideas for the future. In addition, we did do an online survey for UNI students, and we captured a lot of information there. Some was what we might have expected, that for housing, location was important. We also found out that there was a bit of pent-up demand for a few activities on the Hill that are not there today. So going forward, we started synthesizing what we learned last week, as well as all the way back what we learned from January when we were there on the ground, what we learned from various stakeholder meetings and document review. So here's a quick summary of some of the big ideas for thinking about the future of College Hill. But I'm just going to highlight these, and then as we go through the vision, I think you'll see how a lot of these things could come to life. First and foremost, we heard about the importance of stabilizing and enhancing the neighborhoods around the business center district, around the university. And by that, we mean not just that the houses and the areas maintained, the character's great, but there was a desire that rental properties be better maintained. There was a desire that perhaps the ratio between owner and renters, if that could be stabilized, that would also be important. The corollary to that was the idea that the student housing should be more intense and concentrated closer to the campus, and that actually could help with stabilizing the neighborhood, so the students wouldn't be sprinkled all through the neighborhoods quite as much. As you'll hear from the economist, Anita, that idea of bringing the students closer together could have several other positive effects. We heard quite a lot about the concept of reconnecting the lower and upper hill, improving walkability generally throughout the area. Again, we heard a lot about the desire to have more retail, shopping, and dining options in the district. We heard about the importance of the natural areas, the trails, the parks, Searley Park, the prairie area down to the south of the district, as well as the importance of adding street trees that have been lost over the years and maintaining them. We heard a lot about the crab apples on Searley Boulevard and the concern that they maybe needed to have a little upkeep. We did hear a lot about biking, not just the trails, but how do you get around the district and how do you get downtown. We heard about the importance of making parking better. And then last but not least, especially from last January, we heard quite a bit about the importance to improve Hidden Valley in the long term. There were quite a few people who were concerned about that whole area within the College Hill district. What about mobility on College Hill? I didn't mention we had a transportation engineer on our team. He's been analyzing the traffic counts, the parking study that's been done, looking at the Ped Bike ideas. These are the principles that he's recommended the vision plan should incorporate. As I said, this all will be available online, so I'm not going to read through all of these. One of the meetings we had with the Ped Bike Committee, we heard a lot about the trails and the routes and where improvements could be used for ped connections, bicycle connections. Wayfinding, we heard, is really good if you're on the trail, but if you're in other parts of Cedar Falls, people said it's not clear how you find the trail. We also heard folks want there to be better pedestrian markings for crosswalks. We looked at the existing street sections. We will be making some recommendation. That's really long-term if there are opportunities to improve those. Again, high level, we looked at the parking study you've just completed. The black check mark is some steps that have already been implemented. Few ideas are included midterm that will tie into us updating the zoning code and looking at the current parking standards. And then longer term, just how parking could be improved and managed that will help with the development of the entire district. With that whirlwind tour, I want to hand the microphone to Anita, who is going to tell us a little bit about what she found out in the market analysis she's completed.
So it's probably pretty self-evident that the demand and the potential for housing on College Hill is directly tied to the enrollment at UNI. But even though we've seen recent declines in enrollment, there still is an opportunity for new housing within that close-in, tightly defined portion of College Hill, where we could get students closer to campus and closer to the retailers to give them better support. That we're probably looking at it in terms of smaller increments, 10, 20, 30, or 40 units at a time, as opposed to a mega project of 100 or 200 units because of that link to the student enrollment levels. But what we find is that the conditions will not really support new housing development without some adjustment for parking and for and some additional incentives. The reality is that a lot of the existing houses they're used for students are too valuable to just tear down unless you can replace them with multiple units. And the requirements for parking are fairly high relative to the available land. So we need to look at those holistically and look for ways to make sure that the developers can in fact make a profit if they buy and redevelop the existing units. There's obviously now there's an interest in, as we said, stabilizing some of the surrounding neighborhoods and particularly converting some of the student housing that now exists that used to be single family housing, convert that back to single family use, either rental or ownership. We think that's unlikely in this very close-in portion of College Hill, but the better opportunities would be north of 18th Street and east of Iowa, where the neighborhood has more families still living in the area and is not dominated by students. Okay, next slide. And then on the commercial side, I think generally the College Hill needs a larger retail base. It needs greater diversity. It needs more choices for people as they decide where to head out for entertainment or to go to dinner. It helps to have multiple options available depending on their mood at the time. So we'd like to see some new opportunities created for retail on the Hill. Specifically, it would be useful to tie together the lower hill and the upper hill to fill in that gap between 21st and 22nd Street so that they can work together for synergy and both do better at attracting customers. I think in general, the quality of the open space, quality of the public spaces is critical in terms of making it an appealing location with specialty lighting, murals, public art, wider sidewalks, street trees, and the rest to make it a more vibrant and appealing district that will give people a reason to come back again and again. And then we heard quite a few people interested in having a small grocery store on the hill so that they could meet more of their day-to-day needs without having to travel outside to a larger grocery store. The demand exists for a small grocery store of probably 8 to 10,000 square feet, but it will depend on finding the right operator and the right site. We don't have many opportunities for a site of half an acre to 0.8 of an acre. So that will be a challenge as we go forward.
Thanks, Anita. I just want to touch base, circle back on one thing I think Anita hinted at, and then the idea that we really need to think differently about the whole district, the pedestrian environment, the idea that with increased development potential, that creates the opportunity for more retail and dining possibilities. We need to think about parking district-wide, not so much parcel by parcel. And as we look at the zoning ordinance, we need to think about right-sizing the parking requirements, particularly those that are really in close proximity to you and I. And we need to start thinking about, are there opportunities for the city and the university to coordinate further on parking management? So big picture, it's going to be really important moving forward that to really think about opportunities for redevelopment, we need to think about a big picture so that we can unlock that potential. As I said, Jeff is going to do the fun part and now talk about, we have all this area. Jeff.
Yes. Talking about the vision is I know Mary had a lot of fun talking about that other stuff, but this is the fun stuff because it's visioning, thinking about what the place wants to be. The first element of this is we looked at character areas. You know, Mary had an early look at this graphic showing what a quick take on this was at the beginning of the charrette. Coming out of it, it's gotten more refined. There are several character areas, and first of all is the area close in, the orange and red, right at the university, heavily influenced by the university, then the yellow areas around it. Quick point, these character areas, they're not completely uniform within them. There's subtle differences, but they're kind of big, a big overview. The neighborhoods around the study area, I would say way down south, the southwest neighborhood, we've colored it teal here, but the yellow and the teal, these are areas, they're really residential houses. If there's any kind of mixed use in there, it's under the radar or something. And then I would point out also the purple areas on the east side of Main Street. There are areas of commerce and they vary from things like lumber yards, taverns. These are things that people use all the time. They're important. In going into the Main Street and heart of College Hill area, talk specifically about the Main Street. That's the area you think of with storefronts. It's quite, it's really small, compact currently, and you'll see in a minute, there's kind of a gap between the upper and the lower areas. But this is the broad framework within which we work. Next slide. The overall illustrative plan, and we're going to talk about this, everything you're seeing, by the way, is a work in progress. First thing you notice is we're drawing where we're talking about change or models for change. So notice the areas we're not drawing. We're not proposing change in the neighborhood areas around the study area. We're really concentrated close to the university. And I want to make a point about what an illustrative plan is. This is an illustration of the things that could happen under the vision, given some policy and regulation adjustments. It's an idea of what could happen, not what will happen. And I want to make it clear, these are generally, as a rule, not things that the city is going to come in and do. This is about setting up private sector development. And it's a way of illustrating and imagining what the future could be under, given what the citizens told us. So let's go to the first one, which is a look at a model really for if there's going to be new development in the stable neighborhoods around the university. To the right side, or the north side of that Iowa Street, those two new houses. One is a single family house. It's a simple model, single family house, front porch. You'll notice the garage is not on the front. It's behind in the back. And to the left of it is a simple, I'll call it a double house. You could call it a duplex. Again, it's simple, front porch to the street, parking garage in the back off the alley. It just presents a friendly, consistent face that's really fairly similar to the tradition of the existing houses in the area. Next slide. And these are prototypes. A lot of talk about improving the gateways to College Hill. This is the example at Searly and Main Street. First part of that, pedestrian bike connections. Mary mentioned that, connecting the bikeways to the trailways. And here's an idea of what could happen at that intersection, things that could be built. You notice that across the street, there is a small gas station now. It's been reconfigured, but it's still a gas station. We sometimes call this gas backwards, with a little tongue in cheek, but the idea is the building is put forward to the street, and then the gas pumps are back behind the building and shielded from the neighbors by a wall. It's to present a more urban face to the street. Next slide. And now down onto College Street. There's currently a pretty sizable gap of a good block between 21st and 22nd. And here's a what if with some policy and regulation adjustments. Here are two buildings. The one on the right is on the Bonnie's site. The one on the left, there are currently three houses there. These are mixed-use buildings, storefronts on the front, apartments or offices up above. Again, this takes adjustment to the regulations. Next slide. Now, imagine the possibilities as we're about to see what this would look like from the ground. Looking north on College Street, first improvements to the public infrastructure with trees, better sidewalks, marked intersections, and then the possibilities for private sector development. A new building on the Banny's lot, new, more intense development, multi-story residences above. And for this section, definitely storefronts on the ground floor. If you make some changes to policies and regulations. Next slide. Infill housing at the heart of College Hill. By this, we mean right by the university. That's the university, that white building on the upper right. The first example would be stacked flats, small apartment buildings on existing lots. These are possible without combining lots, and then larger small apartment buildings that would take some lot combinations. Currently on the sites, there are houses that have been I think all, but for the most part, cut up into multiple student housing apartments. Next slide. And one of my favorites, a piece of 23rd Street was closed to traffic because there was it's an oddly shaped intersection. And now it's a parking lot, but what if that were turned into a plaza with buildings facing it? And yes, we have talked to the property owners here. And then so it still could be used as a parking area during the week, but special occasions, it could be closed off and become a great site for what we call a festival street. Next slide. And now we're going to go down to the ground and see what that might look like standing in front of the Cloud 9 business. This is what it looks like today. Again, some public infrastructure, paving, street tree improvements, and then private sector development comes in. Storefronts, apartments or offices above. Notice there's an empty lot that you're looking at the far end. Street trees. So this turns from being just a parking lot to a really positive place. And this shows a kind of Saturday market that could be had. I don't know if Cedar Falls does it, but a lot of cities have Christmas markets. And I immediately get a vision of this with Christmas lights strung over the street and stalls in the middle. Despite the cold, I know Iowans come out on Christmas time. And again, next slide. This requires some alterations in policies and regulations. Next slide. And Dry Run Creek, I have to say, we were told that one participant said in her 30 years, Dry Run Creek has never run dry, but we know it has flooded. And there are two projects right here. The great infrastructure improvements have been done in terms of handling the stormwater on Dry Run Creek so that the floodplain and the floods literally are lessened and better controlled. This is a proposal to build on that and first have a continuous connected and treed bicycle and ped path. Thank you, Mary. All the way from Campus Street through to Olive. Now, one more click. On the left side of this, there's some big dormitories and lots of students, many times of the day and night, are moving from there to College Street back and forth. This is part of this is about giving them a good, well-lighted, safe path to travel. And it's also taking that creek to the next level and doing some beautification and making it an amenity that contributes to the area. Next, one more click. The second part of this, you may have noticed that there is a big parking area on the north side of 20th Street here. This area, very nearly all of that side of 20th Street, at least the lots fronting it, are in the floodplain. So this is a proposal talking about a possibility for some or all of those lots to be used as a kind of community parking area that would take some of the load from other developments to the south of it. And also I want to stress, we're calling it green parking. The idea is this would be not just a blacktop laid down, but it would be a parking area with permeable pavement and bioswales. Along the street, you would have a green wall. So when you walked down that sidewalk, you wouldn't be walking in front of a parking lot, but by a green wall with extra street trees, shrubbery, et cetera. Next. And wrapping up, reminder that the illustrative plan and everything you're seeing is a work in progress in pursuit of the really great city council project priorities. And we're showing you, the planning commission, and the public this because we're trying to get your feedback, which we would like you to give it to us ASAP, but you do have until really the end of October. Go on to ourcedarfalls.com. And I won't read the rest of the schedule to you there, but we're looking forward to your comments and to moving this forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff and team. Is there any comments or questions for the presenters here tonight on the College Hill plan? Let me look here, see if we've got anything from P&Z members. Okay, I'm looking through the attendees list, and I'll see if anybody would like to raise your hand on the Zoom. I can recognize you if you have a question. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Any final comments, Karen? Karen, I think you're muted.
I apologize for that. I was just going to say thank you very much to the consultants. And if the commission has any questions or comments too, this is a good time to do that. I see that Dale's waving his hand here. He has a comment.
Yes, there were several comments about having to change some of the ordinances and different things that are related to the College Hill. Is mainly that due to parking restrictions and number of students in parking, or number of students in residence for parking, or for businesses also? Could you shed a little light on what those changes might need to be?
I can only shed a little bit of light on that in that yes, parking is a big part of the equation. And we're looking at, exactly how that might be adjusted. And that's really our next phase. We're diving into that. So that's a question, and there'll be a lot of discussion on it.
Great, go ahead, Leanne.
Couple of the other things I think we need to look at is the building height and stories and some of that. Isn't that correct, Marty?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the goals of the project is to create a vision, and then based on that vision that we hear from the community to build the tools to achieve that vision. And one of those important tools, of course, is to update the zoning ordinance. And I think the team here will be working on that as the next step.
Great.
Yeah.
Leanne.
I just wanted to say it's a much needed improvement, to see those buildings and to see that the retail and then the upper stories. It's a much needed improvement, I think.
What's the time frame on transforming some of these visions into proposed changes to ordinance or code? I mean,
Karen, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to start and you finish?
Go ahead and start, and then I can chime in, I guess.
So as you may be aware, we worked on the downtown vision plan about a year and a half ago. And so we have done the very initial preliminary draft review that staff is reviewing on that. And we'll start, I think, moving that forward. And so then the proposed changes for College Hill, as Karen said, will be built on the vision plan. So we need to make sure we don't want to start tweaking the existing zoning until the plan is adopted, because we want to make sure that we're, drafting things that will implement that plan. We have been reviewing the existing zoning, so we have a sense of what issues may be out there, from, as everybody's already mentioned, the parking to how infill is handled in the surrounding neighborhoods, where mixed use is currently permitted and where it's not. So we're going to be looking at all those sort of different aspects of the current zoning. The overlay is already in place, and I think it was a big advance when it was adopted a few years ago. But so we're really looking at taking that next step. Some of the changes may also be on the procedure side. Some will be about the standards themselves, and some will be, can we actually make the process work better for staff, for you all as the Planning Commission, as well as for the development community? Because as Anita highlighted, some of these things, we can change the rules, but if the development community isn't able to do it on the private sector side, then it doesn't matter so much what the rules are. The development will still really be kind of locked up. So I think we'll be starting to look at changes and starting to think about recommended changes this winter. And I think it will probably be spring before we move forward, because this is going to really build on the work that we're doing in downtown, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Karen, you want to say anything more?
I think that covers it pretty well. We are, I want to emphasize this will build on that framework that we're doing some of that initial work with the procedures and some of those administrative aspects of zoning that we'll have to put in place. And then once those are in place, the actual regulations and that sort of thing can happen with College Hill as well as downtown. So it just builds on that framework that we're working on in downtown as well.
You all do this across the country. Is there anything that really surprised you about this project that's maybe different?
I don't know if Jeff and Anita have anything they want to say. There was
COVID-19.
Anita didn't mention this, but one of the things I found really interesting is, as much as people would like to see more, retail and dining, et cetera, on the Hill, I thought it was very positive that there really isn't any commercial vacancy to speak of. So I think that's a strength to work from. We've definitely been in other communities where they're trying to create a market where they don't really have one. I mean, the university is a wonderful asset, but for the neighborhood, it's a double-edged sword. It brings a great strength to the neighborhood, but also there are certain things that the neighborhood has to, struggle with, because they have students, which are really, really important, but then that also makes the dynamic a little bit different.
Very good. Any final questions or comments, commissioners? Seeing none?